Welcome to the Blue Gold Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Roddy, joined by Tanner Mountz and Korey Moore. And let's get right into it. West Virginia this weekend suffered a 34-12 loss to Penn State, and things just didn't really click for the Mountaineers. Your initial thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I mean, that was the worst possible outcome I think that you could have if you were West Virginia. You know, the hype was there. Everyone was saying, can this team beat Penn State? Can they go on a run? Can they do it? And, possibly with the talent that everyone saw in the team from last year. But I mean, the reality of it was, everybody knew Penn State was the better football team. They're faster, stronger, bigger, more athletic, more talented. So it was going to be a test for West Virginia. But I think what has everyone so upset, including the team themselves, is how poorly that they played. They did not live up to the standard the last 5, 6 games of the season last year that everybody saw that they could be. Everyone expected that in week one. Nobody saw it. The poor play was a huge issue for West Virginia, and that kind of is what has people worried some because it is Penn State. You could walk out of that game with a loss like they did last season, where people were kind of still optimistic and there were positive things that you could take away from that game up in Happy Valley, but it just doesn't feel like that this year because it was a true beatdown.
Yeah, I think I said last week, and I was proven wrong, that the only thing that could be happening from this game is a positive impact. I said if we win, that it would be huge. But if West Virginia loses, it wouldn't be a big deal because people aren't really expecting for West Virginia to lose or for them to win. But for them to lose like this, it's a whole different situation. This was like the only way that I think the loss really could have taken the wind out of their sails here, and it happened because I mean when you have an offensive performance the way that West Virginia did, whenever you're relying so much on Garrett Green and he's the one that underperformed in the game for the most part, it's just a sad thing to watch. So if you're West Virginia, you're really doubting the things that you went into the game thinking were going to be better, thinking were the reason you were going to win, which is Garrett Green, which is those long ball threats, which is everything like that. And it just didn't happen. None of it clicked. And so to see nothing positive really come out of that game other than a little bit of first half defense, it's a scary thing for West Virginia fans.
Yeah, I think another factor of why this is such a bad outcome from this game is because not only just the team, but West Virginia University, the state as a whole, they pushed all their chips to the center of the table this week with McAfee coming, with big noon kickoff. I mean, everybody showed up. Everybody was talking. Everyone was saying that this West Virginia team can do it. It felt like the old West Virginia teams. All the alumni came back. The national spotlight was on Morgantown and the Mountaineers again for the first time in what feels like forever. And that's the performance that went out and everybody saw on TV. So that's why it feels like such a pot or a negative. Like you said, Corey, we didn't think that there was really a bad thing that could come out of this. And I guess schedule wise, there isn't that much harm to West Virginia. You still have the Big 12 in front of you, but just as a feeling in Morgantown, as a feeling around the team, you hype yourself up. You have the national spotlight on you. Everybody is watching the Mountaineers. Everybody is hearing all these great things about Garrett Green, the offensive line, the rushing attack. Everything's going to click this year in Morgantown, and that's the performance. And it was kind of, it was kind of embarrassing. That's kind of the word to put it because of how much national attention was on West Virginia. Everybody was watching. Pat McAfee hyped up West Virginia more than anybody else in the country, and to see that performance then, and everyone's kind of now laughing at the Mountaineers and saying, no, they're the same old thing that they've been for the last 4 or 5 seasons now. I think embarrassing is the right word to use.
Yeah, Tanner, I think you said it best. There are just such heavy expectations placed on West Virginia. Maybe unfair. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I predicted them to win and just wasn't there. And I think that makes it a lot more disappointing. And Corey, you talked about Garrett Green underperforming, and I'd have to agree with you. I mean, those like mishaps on the snaps, losing the football, but he took accountability for it. And he wasn't effective in the run game. He took 10 carries, 5 yards. It just didn't look like Garrett Green out there.
10 carries for 5 yards is unacceptable from somebody who is being marketed as a huge rushing threat. I understand that he was trying to feed Cole Taylor a bit, and Cole Taylor played really well as a receiver, like at the tight end position. Like he was a good receiving threat there. But I mean, it seemed like there were some wild passes that were thrown to Taylor specifically that there was no business for him to even catch. And Garrett Green was going for those rather than trusting himself. He that one play where he just ran to the left and just ran away. He seemed scared during the game. So it's honestly just unacceptable to watch overall. And what's really unacceptable, I mean, you can't fumble the ball on the first snap of the season. Absolutely not. I can't believe that happened. So again, West Virginia was looking at this guy as, hey, this is the face of our year. This is what's going to take us to the next level, the potential Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, his hype was going up rapidly over the last week from being like, hey, this might be a top 25 quarterback in NCAA to being, hey, this guy might win the Heisman. His hype went way too high, which, I mean, we can have our own thoughts about whether or not that should have happened. But regardless, he did not play up to any amount of standards that he had. He didn't even look like he was a starting caliber quarterback on a 10-win team. So if that's what you're going to have, then people are going to be concerned about West Virginia winning the Big 12, which was potential projections from McAfee and other guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Korey made a couple of good points there. Like, I mean, you do have to look at some of the things that Penn State did. In terms of the rushing attack, Penn State loaded the box up. They had multiple quarterback spies on some play. They were going to take Garrett Green's legs out of it. Did anybody expect them for Garrett Green had 10 attempts for 5 yards? Absolutely not. Nobody expected those numbers. But I think, Penn State came into the game saying, we're not going to let Garrett Green's legs beat us. We're going to have to make him throw the football. And that's the disappointing part for, most people around Morgantown, I think, is that you didn't see that with his arm. Penn State said, hey, Green, like, we know that you can run the football. We're going to absolutely stop the run and leave our guys out on islands. Let your wide receivers try to make moves one-on-one and see if you can beat us through the air. And he just didn't. And like you said, Korey, it seemed like he was uncomfortable in the pocket. Nothing was smooth with the offense by any means. I mean, the snaps weren't even on time. He he didn't really have much time, but he was still like not comfortable in the pocket. He wasn't looking to run like he normally does when he has to scramble. Like, it just didn't seem like the Garrett Green that we saw basically all season from Penn State game on last year. That it is concerning, but you got to think that he'll get his legs back. I'm not worried about that when it comes to Garrett Green. He's going to find ways to rush the football. That part of his game is going to be fine. I don't think that West Virginia fans should fear that. To me, the worrisome part is Penn State was able to load the box, really leave their secondary exposed and on man coverage and on islands, and kind of, basically say, if you want to beat us through the air, the opportunity's there, but we're going to take away the run. And West Virginia and Garrett Green still couldn't use that arm to attack downfield and make big plays. There were no big plays, no explosive plays for West Virginia. The only one that it was when Cole Taylor had to tip it to himself. It probably 99 times out of 100 is going to be an incompletion, and he just made the one catch that'll happen there. So that's the worrisome part for me. When I look at this West Virginia team, isn't necessarily the rushing attack. You know that they're going to find that. Penn State is one of the most talented defenses, especially at the linebacker and defensive line. So that's not that worrisome to me. It's the fact that they couldn't take advantage of any deep plays when Penn State was loading up the box like that.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. Penn State just completely shut down West Virginia's rushing attack. I mean, last year they averaged 228.5 yards a game rushing the ball. This game, 85 yards. Jaheim White, he looked good in the first half, but then trainers like walked him off the field with him, like holding his wrist hand. Came back in the second half, and I just didn't think he was as effective. He ended with 33 yards on 8 attempts. And Garrett Green throwing the ball, 15 for 28, 161 yards. And I think it kind of showed us who his favorite targets are going to be this season. Traylon Ray got targeted a lot, Preston Fox, and then obviously Cole Taylor, as you mentioned. And the passing game just needs to take a huge step if teams are going to continue to put that spy on Green.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like, somebody's got to step up for West Virginia. I mean, there was nobody. I mean, you saw Cole Taylor over the middle a lot, and that's going to be natural for the offense just because of his size in the Big 12. Like, there's going to be a lot of times where he's open just because of his size, but you got to have an outside threat. Like, it has been 5-6 years at least since West Virginia has had some kind of deep threat on the outside. You look at I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I do know if you look at the man-to-man win percentage for West Virginia wide receivers the past couple of seasons, they have been way down on the list nationally. Like, one of the worst teams at playing man-to-man and getting win rates on your route running. They're just not good at it. And for whatever reason, that was kind of what we heard all offseason. You're going to have Traylon Ray improve. You have Hudson Clement coming back for a second year. You go and you get Bray from Oklahoma State. Like, you have all these other guys now that are supposed to be deep threats, explosive play kind of guys, and you didn't see it. You didn't see any of it against Penn State. Nobody won deep. There was nothing across the middle of the field. That's the worrisome part when it comes. Someone's got to do that. You got to have a wide receiver be able to take the top off the defense, really back them up, and open everything else up. And until they do that, the West Virginia offense could struggle.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy about it to me is that the Mountaineers didn't even try to make a long threat in any way like that. I mean, I think Hudson had one like maybe 10 to 15 yard catch. I mean, and that was like a little bit exciting, even though that was a nothing play. People were excited about that in the stadium. Like, do something more of that. And what the problem is that Penn State, probably a top 3 defense in all of college football, and their headliners are the secondary, a lot of returners on the secondary. But instead of trying to attack that secondary whenever the D line was also destroying the run game for West Virginia just knew, hey, their secondary is really good. So I'm just not going to do anything. Garrett Green is not going to target anyone in the long throws or anything like that. So the receiving game was just non-existent overall. I mean, and Ryan, you talked about Jaheim White looking okay. I mean, I thought CJ Donaldson looked all right. But overall, as a full rushing core in general, if we're on the 1 yard line, if I have a team, I'm on the 1 yard line, and we're taking three attempts to actually score that touchdown, that's just unacceptable. That cannot be happening. And then for them to try again with the 2-point conversion on that afterwards and not get it, it's like, yeah, obviously they're not going to get it because Penn State has a lockdown defensive line that completely read our offense entirely. So that's what I'm thinking if I'm West Virginia. And it's just an unacceptable thing to see in general that West Virginia never really tried to adapt in any way, never tried to change any sort of game plan. It was just it was nothing because again, Garrett Green did not rush himself, and then he didn't throw the ball himself. So offensively, there needs to be something there, and West Virginia just had no momentum at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think another factor of that is just the offensive line did not live up to any kind of hype whatsoever. I mean, you're losing a first round talent. I know Zach Frazier was taken in the second round, but clearly a first round talent. It's going to be a starter week 1 in the NFL. So, like, yeah, you're going to take a hit with that. You lose Doug Nestor, one of the tackles. Wyatt Milam was fantastic. Neil Brown talked about that. Didn't play in the second half because of cramps. He should be good to go for Albany in the upcoming week. But, I mean, he was great in the first half. But other than that, not great by West Virginia. You could look at the snaps and, say that was a little bit of, nerves, whatever you want to call that. But I wouldn't even say that was the biggest problem. A lot of that fell on Garrett Green. But, Brandon Yates wasn't great at center. The guards weren't great either. There wasn't much running lanes all day for West Virginia. Garrett Green only had a couple of seconds in the pocket every time he wanted to throw. And you do have to credit it. I know fans don't want to hear it, but you do have to credit Penn State. That is, like you said, Korey, probably a top 3 defense in all of college football. So they are going to make plays. They're going to make offenses struggle. However, if West Virginia wants to call themselves one of the better offenses, a top 25 offense, heck, a top 25 team in the country, you got to do more than what you did against Penn State. Like that's the worrisome part is, yeah, Penn State's going to stop a lot. Penn State is going to make plays. They're going to do those sorts of things because they have that talent. But West Virginia should still be able to answer with their own plays if they are as talented as they've been telling the fans, as the fans have been hoping for, as Neil Brown's been preaching. I know he said that this was a complete shock because of the way that they've been playing in camp. And maybe, just maybe, this is what the team needed. Like, maybe they were overhyped. Maybe they got full of themselves and thought that they were better than they were. And this could be a good, game for the team to kind of check their egos at the door, come in, play against Albany, who I know we'll get into for a little bit, and then head up I-79 to take on Pitt before entering conference play and hopefully get it on a roll. Maybe this is the game that they needed to kind of humble themselves and realize, hey, we're not at that level yet. We got some work to do, and we got to get there.
Yeah, and one last thing to add there. I think Neil Brown needs to target with his team exactly what they did wrong, what needs to be changed. I think there was a lot of talk before this game of expectations of what they can do, what the Mountaineers are able to do. And like you said, he was shocked because of what they were doing in training camp. This is not a matter of what West Virginia is capable of doing. They have the depth offensively to make things happen. They have defensive schemes that should make things happen. They have an interesting layout defensively in comparison to any other team in college football. So those are all things that they have on their side. But the fact of the matter is it didn't work against Penn State. So Neil Brown and his coaching staff needs to address exactly what went wrong and how to fix it. Not just saying, "Hey, you guys can do better. Here's what you did that in training camp or in any other situation that was good. Let's do that." No, we need to talk about what happened in this game, why it happened, and how we can make sure it doesn't happen in any other situation in the Big 12.
Yeah, I just think a complete wake up call for West Virginia. If they want to be up there, compete with the top 25 teams, the Blue Buds, Penn State shows you the level you need to be at. It shows you just how effective they were, how they just completely shut down West Virginia's offense. But now flipping sides of the ball, looking at West Virginia's defense, head coach Neil Brown highlighted two players on the defense. First, it was Anthony Wilson, and then it was redshirt freshman Josiah Trotter, who I think had a great game. West Virginia's leading tackler, 10 tackles, half of those solo, and also pickup of a pass defended. What do you guys think about Trotter so far?
Yeah, to me, Trotter was the best player on the defense. And I know Neil Brown said that as well, but just watching the game, there was one guy specifically in the gold and blue that you saw on the defensive end that stood out. Whether it was just speed, whether it was tracking to the sideline, he was really the only positive thing that you could take away from the defense. The defensive line got no pressure whatsoever. Drew Aller had all day to throw in that pocket. Drew Aller was able to get out of the pocket. Drew Aller was able to get up and expose through holes, make linebackers miss. Drew Aller is not a mobile quarterback whatsoever. I mean, he is. Can he get out of the pocket? Can he make plays with his feet? Absolutely. Should he be scrambling for 15 to 20 yards multiple times on a drive and making linebackers miss? Absolutely not. And yet he did it multiple times where he would just put his foot in the ground, make a very slow change of direction, and our linebackers would be flying by 5-6 yards away from out. Like the pursuit was awful, but like you said, Trotter was the only positive that you could take away from that defense. He was flying to the ball. He was filling the run lanes. Really didn't have too much pass responsibility. He was a lot more of an edge rusher and things like that. But I didn't see him too much in the pass lanes. But like he was great, and that is a positive that West Virginia can take out of this game. The secondary, it's hard to really kind of put the blame on them when Drew Aller can just stand in the back and have all day to throw the football. Were they perfect? No. Did Aubrey Burks mess up that cover two at halftime and kind of cause that? Yeah, like that happens. That's unacceptable. Like, not to take the blame away. Like, the secondary was not perfect, and I'm not trying to take them off the hook, but you can't fully blame them when the offense is getting everything that they want, when they can rush the ball for 5-6 yards a carry, because then it keeps you on your toes. Drew Aller has all day in the pocket. Like, there's so much that went wrong that you can't fully blame the secondary. They weren't great, but it also wasn't their fault. To me, it was the D-line and the linebackers outside of Trotter. They were atrocious. Penn State got everything they wanted in the box. They controlled the line of scrimmage, had all day to throw the football, and you're not going to win football games when you do that. Like those are probably the three most important things that you can do on the football field. And Penn State, excuse me, did all three of them.
Yeah, I thought West Virginia's secondary was like it looked like it was set up to be fine. If everything else was moving correctly, I think West Virginia's secondary was capable. I think you have the talent on that secondary to make things happen. Again, Aubrey Burks learning a new position in the secondary a little bit. There are some things that need to be worked out, and those were things that are all right to be worked out if other things in the defense are working fine. Like I think I think the storyline for the defense could have been entirely different. Like, hey, there are some things to work out. There are some things to improvement. But with with guys like Trotter, there's potential for huge things. I think that would be the storyline if there wasn't a massive blunder all the time from the defensive line, from the linebackers. I mean, like you were saying with Allar, it's crazy to me that there were plays where West Virginia read the offense correctly, and then they had a situation where they just needed to take down Drew Aller, and they're coming in at him from all of his sides and then nothing from in front of him, and he just runs away. It's like, what is happening right now? Why is West Virginia just leaving open a wide open situation? You got to box him in if that's the way you're going to do it. If you're going to leave him open to scramble like that. And again, like you said, he's not notoriously a big rushing quarterback. Like he shouldn't have that reputation, but right now he looks like a really solid rushing quarterback because West Virginia's defense did absolutely nothing to stop him. So again, I agree with you. I think the secondary is fine. I think you can have some kinks worked out. It wasn't perfect. There are some things to fix. Again, like I was saying with Neil Brown, he needs to address everything. I think that's going to be the same thing with Shadon Brown and his secondary. in the coming week. There are things to work out. There are things to address. But as a team, there's a huge mindset to address that you've got to stop plays. If you see something going so right for Penn State, that has to be what you're shutting down. And Penn State came in on their defense from the first snap of the game saying, hey, their run attack is what is good. Let's shut it down. We saw things go well. If I'm West Virginia, you're seeing things go well for Penn State, and you're not doing anything to shut it down. And that's the problem there for the Mountaineers, that their defense just didn't know how to address any threat that Penn State was throwing at them. So hopefully that can change as the year goes on.
Yeah, just a massive game by Drew Aller. Looking at the stats here, 11 of 17, that's 65%, 216 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he finished the game as their second leading rusher, 44 yards on the ground, just behind Nick Singleton, who had a massive game, that big 40-yard run touchdown. I mean, they have Bo Pribula, who they design quarterback runs for, and Drew Aller still finished with more yards, and he just looked way more effective in the run game. But now looking towards you, Albany, I just think this needs to be a complete, like, test everything out for West Virginia. Game scenario. It's an FCS team, and I'm not saying like, oh yeah, they're just gonna blow them right out of the water and just have second strings in, but it is an opportunity to just kind of figure things out in that game scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it should be stated, yeah, it is an FCS team, but this is an FCS team that made the FCS playoffs last season. So they're one of the top FCS teams. So this can by no means be a walk in the park for West Virginia. If they were to come out on the field at Milan Puskar Stadium and put together a performance that they did a week prior to that, this could be a long game, a much closer game than what it should be for West Virginia. But like you said, Ryan, this should be the cleanup game. And it absolutely has to be because of the test next week. You don't want to look ahead. You don't want to look up to Pitt and be preparing for that and not take care of Albany. But this should be the game where everybody starts to clean things up and get that confidence back, because that's the issue now. We mentioned at the start of the podcast, we didn't really account for a negative coming out of the Penn State game, that the entire team could lose their confidence. But that's what it seems to be. Like, this entire team just got absolutely run off their home field in front of one of the most hyped games that West Virginia's had in a couple decades. Their confidence could be shot. So this is the game that you got to get that back. This is the game that you got to clean things up, test some things out, figure out what works, figure out the players that you have, get the offense clicking again, get guys back in rhythm, get the snap count down, get the run game back. Like, this is what you have to do against the FCS team. But if they don't prepare, if they don't find it, if they don't come out and play better than they did against Penn State, Albany is no pushover. This is an FCS team that made the playoffs. You cannot take them lightly, but they should be able to clean some things up and come out with a win.
Yeah, and with Albany being one of the better FCS teams, I thought going into this, like, if there was a standard game against Penn State where West Virginia may have lost a little bit by a little bit, but looked good overall, I think this game could have been a huge energy game. But what it looks like instead now is it's a saving grace game. Like, West Virginia has to save their entire reputation based on this game. This has to be a blowout. I think what it could have been instead, if West Virginia lost by a little bit to Penn State, is it could have been a huge Garrett Green game where, hey, maybe the score is close. Maybe in general the score is close, but there are some really exciting plays happening where West Virginia is making smart decisions and everything looks great, and the outcome comes out the way it wanted to be. And with a lot of fans in the stadium, probably after a decent showing against Penn State, I think it would have been a great job for West Virginia to have their energy back, even if there was a loss. Now, since it was a blowout loss, for lack of a better word, it was a blowout loss against Penn State, I think West Virginia has to save everything from this game alone. It cannot be, and no one's going to be praising them after the game either. If they blow out Albany, fans are going to say, hey, that's what they should have been doing. That's what should have been going on. And so West Virginia just needs to save their reputation here, and then they can go to energy towards Pitt, which should have been happening in this past week. It should have been solid reputation, energy from Albany, and then we take off from there if we're West Virginia. But now it has to be 1 week back from that, save your reputation against Albany, get energy from Pitt, and then go to the Big 12 conference play with the momentum that you want to have.
Yeah, like you guys said, I'm just really looking for West Virginia to just rebuild that running game, reestablish it, and just look forward, because then you got Pitt and then you got the Big 12 gauntlet if you're West Virginia. And if they do build a comfortable lead against UAlbany, I want to see a little Nico Marchiol. I know he had one pass attempt against Penn State. It was an interception, but I want to see what he's got, honestly, because he could be the guy next year for West Virginia.
I mean, yeah, you can look at the interception, but at least Nico took a shot down the field. Like, I know it was late in the game, but Nico, like, and it didn't matter much, but he took a shot down the
That
field.
is exactly how I felt about Nico. I mean, sure, he threw an interception. He was the only one brave enough to do it. Between the huge Heisman quarterback, Heisman hyped up quarterback, and him, it was the backup who had the balls to actually throw it and to actually try. So he was the only one with the guts to throw the interception. It wasn't that Garrett Green was good by not throwing the interception. He couldn't hold on to the ball. Nico Marchiol tried something. Yeah, I would like to see what he can do next week as well, Ryan.
Yeah, like just take shots. Take shots. Like, why not? Like, you found yourself down. Take some shots. Open the playbook up, Neil Brown. Like, it was time to do it. And you know what? Maybe they did. And we weren't on the sidelines. We weren't in the communications. Maybe it wasn't the coaching staff. Maybe it wasn't the play calling. Maybe it truly was just execution. But we don't know. All we know is there were no shots taken down the field until Nico Marchiol came in the game and threw one up. Because why not? Why not? You're already down that much. Take a shot. People want to see it. That's how you can roll into the next week. Yeah, you've already lost this game. Let's try to dial up something. Let's find something going into Albany, some kind of confidence that we can pull forward and get through the mud through this game. There was none of that against Penn State, but you know that's where the opportunity falls. And against Albany, I really think the key factors for this game is, yeah, like you said, Ryan, you should be able to get your backups in, get some exposure because Nico could be that guy. I mean, he should be. Like, there's no doubt about it. He's been staying here and not transferring away when I'm sure he's had other teams in his ear because he wants to play in the gold and blue, and I think he will get that chance next year. But to me, you got to find the chemistry, specifically Garrett Green and his wide receivers. That is priority number one to me for this game coming up. Can Garrett Green get on time and find that rhythm with his wide receivers? Because if they don't, it could be a very long next week and season for that matter for West Virginia. The other one, you got to get the run game going as well. It's going to find itself at some point. It's too talented of a backfield. The offensive line isn't as good as it was last year, but it's still a very talented offensive line that should be able to dominate most teams outside of Penn State. You got to get that going. And defensively, you got to find some way to get pressure. You got to draw something up. I know Jordan Leslie does not like to be aggressive. He does not like to send guys because it puts his secondary in weaker positions, and he's very much of a bend, don't break kind of guy. Let teams march down the field and force them into making a mistake rather than give up the big play. But he's got to find a way to get pressure because if you can't get pressure all season long, if you can't find some kind of schematic system that puts your guys in a spot to make a play, to create a big play on the defensive side of the football, you're not going to win a lot of games. And those are the three things, I guess, that West Virginia's really got to focus on against Albany to move forward. Do they need it against Albany to win the game? No, they shouldn't. But do they need it moving forward? Absolutely.
Yeah, and just no really pressure in that Penn State game, obviously. And I want to see more of Sean Martin. You know, he's the senior, he's the veteran of that group. He just needs to imply the pressure. I saw more from TJ Jackson, honestly. The transfer from Jacksonville State. Just completely need to see more out of Sean Martin. I also want to see more out of Tyron Bradley and Ty French. Those two kind of rotate there. Honestly, it's gonna be a huge factor going forward, like you said, Tanner, if West Virginia can imply that pressure. And then going back to Nico, yeah, I completely agree. I like seeing him take a shot. It's not that it was a bad throw by any means. DB made a great play. But I think they talked about this all season, how the addition of Ryder Burton helps Nico Marchiol because now they have somebody else that can run the offense. You look at Nico Marchiol last season when Garrett Green went down in the backyard brawl. Nico came in and he kind of played conservatively, didn't really get to use his legs too much. But now that you have Ryder Burton, a third guy that can run that offense that they're confident in, they're going to let Nico take those shots. They're going to let Nico play how he wants to play, and they're going to set up plays around Nico. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to perform if he gets in against UAlbany.
Yeah, man, I think you kind of heard that all off season a little bit about They now don't have to change the offense for Nico. They're fully confident in his abilities, and he's ready to go if they need him. Well, this could be the game that we get to see that, because like you said, things happen. Garrett Green went down and missed the backyard brawl, and then Texas Tech as well last season. Things happen, like injuries happen. You got to be ready. So that is a good one, and that's the most important position on the field. So to see the backup, let's see Nico Marchiol come in, and let's not run the football when he's in there. Let's not be conservative. If he's in there, obviously West Virginia's up by a lot, hopefully, and not down by a lot against Albany. But don't take your foot off the gas. Like run the offense. Let Nico, be a part of the offense, a normal offense. Get him in there. Let's see what he's got, because that is a big factor. Like you said, things happen, injuries happen. Is he going to be ready to go? This is the game that he could use to really do it. And he got that last year against Duquesne, and ended up being a big factor the following week then when they had the backyard brawl. And he did have to play basically the entirety of that game. So that was big for him to get those couple drives against Duquesne last year where he played well and kind of got that confidence going forward. Not saying that that's going to happen to Garrett Green again, but you got to be ready at all times.
Sure. And again, Marchiol does have the opportunity to kind of take off now with having a third option at quarterback. But let's just set the record straight, set everything straight here. The pressure right now is on Garrett Green. The headliner for UAlbany is not Nico Marchiol, even if he gets a shot. Again, I would love for him to get a lot of minutes in the second half. Things are going right. Garrett Green needs to be the one with all the pressure on him in going into UAlbany here, and he needs to have a really strong performance. The reason why Nico Marchiol should be getting playing time is because Garrett Green did so well that West Virginia can afford to rest him. That needs to be the headline. He needs to be able to find his guys. He needs to be able to find his own legs, and I'm really going to be watching Garrett Green in this game to make sure that he can lead West Virginia to what they want him to do.
Now, wrapping it up here, what I put in my takeaways is that West Virginia would much rather have this game happen now against Penn State than at the end of the season, because there is so much to work on. There's so much to build upon, and there's just a lot of room for improvement. So in the coming weeks, we're going to see how this West Virginia team responds. If they're just going to let that Penn State game just dwell on them and just beat them down and just be like, kill their confidence. But we could also see a major turnaround as they look forward and they finish the season playing in the Big 12. That's going to do it for us today. For Ryan, Roddy, Tanner Mountz, Korey Moore, thanks for tuning in.